I still remember the moment the power went out. 1 second, we were sitting on opposite ends of the couch, half watching some crime documentary on Netflix. Barely talking, just two exhausted people sharing space. Then, with a low hum and a final flicker, the room was swallowed by darkness, and something changed. I heard him shift. His voice cut through the black. "You okay?" It was Dean, my roommate, my very married roommate. I'd moved in 6 months earlier, after my divorce finalized. I needed a place fast, cheap, close to work. He'd just separated from his wife, said it was temporary, that she was figuring things out back home in Vermont. The spare room in his townhouse was cheap, clean, quiet. It was supposed to be easy. And for a while, it was. We had rules. No drama, no flirting, no drinking together unless someone else was home. Rules we followed. Until that night. No big deal, I said. Just the power. But even I could hear how different my voice sounded. Lighter, nervous. "Want me to find some candles?" His voice was closer now, closer than it had been all night. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Sure." I heard drawers open, the shuffle of boxes, the scratch of a match. And then a soft glow lit his face. That face I'd gotten used to seeing every day, half asleep in the mornings, flushed from the gym, focused in front of his laptop. A face I had studied far more than I should have. "Found two," he said, setting them down on the table. We sat back down. Silence. The storm outside had quieted. But inside, something else had started. His knee brushed mine. I didn't move it. He looked over. "We're really alone now," he said. "Like, really." I smiled. "Yeah, guess we are." That's when he said it. The sentence I would replay over and over for weeks. "Do you ever wonder if we crossed a line already, without even knowing it?" My breath caught. And in the flicker of candlelight, I realized the most dangerous thing wasn't that we were roommates. It was that we had stopped pretending that's all we were. Dean and I weren't supposed to mean anything to each other. We made that clear from the start. We were both fresh out of heartbreak, him from a separation that still had legal loose ends, me from a marriage that ended not with a bang, but with a slow fade into apathy. We met through a mutual friend who thought it was smart to split rent and avoid the emotional risks of living alone. It was supposed to be temporary. Just a few months, just until things settled, just nothing serious. And for the first few weeks, that's exactly what it was. We were polite, distant. We left post-it notes about groceries and shared calendar updates, like coworkers more than roommates. But real life doesn't follow house rules. It started small. He left an extra coffee mug out for me in the mornings, black 2 sugars, just like I liked it. I started folding his laundry when I did mine, just because it felt easier that way. We started watching a show together on Thursday nights. Then Fridays, then Sundays. And before long, I found myself noticing things I shouldn't. Like the way he always smelled like cedar and citrus even after the gym. Like the scar on his jaw just under his stubble that I wanted to trace with my thumb. Like the way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. We never said anything, but the tension settled into the walls, like heat from an old radiator, always humming beneath the surface. Now in the glow of candlelight, that heat was tangible. When he asked if we'd already crossed a line, I didn't answer. I couldn't. So instead, I laughed softly. That sounds like something someone says before they do something reckless. His eyes didn't leave mine. Maybe we've been reckless all along. The silence after that sentence was so thick it felt alive. My heart pounded. "We're not supposed to," I said, though. My voice lacked conviction. "I know." "She could come back. I know that too." And then he said the thing I hadn't dared admit, not even to myself. "But she hasn't, and you're here." The power stayed out another hour. We didn't speak for most of it, but we didn't move away from each other either. And when the lights finally flickered back on, it was almost disappointing. Because something inside me whispered, it's not the darkness you have to fear. It's what the light makes undeniable. After the lights came back on, we both pretended nothing had changed. Dean stood up first, running a hand through his hair like he needed to shake off whatever invisible current had passed between us. He made a joke about the power company. I laughed too loud and disappeared into my room before either of us could say something we couldn't take back. But it was already too late, because the shift had happened. And you can't unfeel proximity when it brushes too close to desire. Over the next few days, we acted like roommates again. Civil, cordial, slightly more distant than before. But under the surface, it felt like we were both waiting for something to justify what we were both thinking. That something came 4 days later. It was Friday, raining again. My umbrella had flipped inside out in the wind, and I came home soaked to the skin shoes squishing on the hardwood floor. Dean was cooking some kind of garlic-heavy pasta, and the whole kitchen smelled like comfort. "You okay?" he asked, handing me a towel. I nodded, but my voice cracked when I said, "Yeah." He looked at me longer than necessary. "Go get changed. I'll pour you a glass." I emerged 10 minutes later in dry clothes and damp hair, and he handed me a generous pour of red wine. We sat side by side on the couch again. Just like before, except it wasn't like before. Because now every word, every laugh, every glance held weight, implication, risk. So he said, "After the second glass, are we going to pretend nothing happened the other night?" I swallowed hard. "We didn't do anything." He tilted his head. "Didn't we?" I didn't answer, because it felt like we had. Not with our bodies, but with something more dangerous intent. "We crossed something," I finally said softly. "I just don't know what to do about it." He turned toward me. "I think we keep pretending." But the way he said it didn't sound like conviction. It sounded like warning. We kept sipping. The storm outside mirrored what brewed between us, unpredictable electric and heavy with anticipation. And then the power flickered again. We both laughed nervously. "Déjà vu," I said. He leaned closer. "What if this time we stopped pretending?" The air changed. My breath caught. And that's when he kissed me. Slow at first, like he was giving me time to pull away. I didn't. My hand slid into his hair. His arm curled around my waist. It was a kiss full of questions, full of guilt, full of hunger that had waited too long to speak. When we finally broke apart, we didn't say anything. Because what could we say? We weren't just roommates anymore. And we could never go back. The next morning felt like waking up underwater. I wasn't in his bed. He wasn't in mine. We hadn't gone any further than the kiss. But it might have been easier if we had at least then the guilt would have had clearer borders. Instead, I woke up to the sound of the coffee pot sputtering, the soft clink of a spoon against ceramic, and the low murmur of Dean's footsteps across the kitchen tile. Normal sounds, ordinary sounds. But now they felt too loud, like they were trying to drown out everything we hadn't said. When I walked into the kitchen, he looked up. "Morning." I nodded. "Morning." The tension wasn't sharp. It was intimate, dangerous, familiar. He slid a mug toward me. "I didn't mean to last night," he began, then paused. "Actually, I did. I meant it. I just didn't mean for it to make everything weird." I stared at the coffee like it might give me the words I didn't have. "We were drinking," I offered, my voice flat. "We weren't drunk." Silence. "I've kissed people before, and it didn't feel like that," he said. "Have you?" I looked at him then, really looked. And something in me, something stubborn, scared, maybe self-destructive, whispered the truth. "No, I haven't." His jaw clenched slightly. He nodded like that confirmation had answered more than he'd even asked. We didn't talk about it again that day, or the next, but something had undeniably changed. He started coming home earlier, sitting closer, asking deeper questions. And I started answering. I told him things I hadn't told anyone, not even my ex. About how lonely I had felt in a marriage full of polite silences. About how I used to cry in my car at lunch just to let something out. About how I'd stopped recognizing myself in photos, like the woman smiling back was just pretending. He listened, and he didn't flinch. One night, 2 weeks later, I found myself standing in the hallway between our rooms, barefoot, holding a glass of wine I didn't really want. He opened his door. We didn't touch, but we didn't need to. His voice was low. "Are you here because you want to talk? Or because you don't?" I stepped inside, and for the first time since I moved in, I let the door close behind me. The rest of the world stayed on the other side. So did every line we were about to cross. The door clicked shut behind me, soft but final. He didn't move closer. Neither did I. We just stood there in that twilight glow of his bedside lamp shadows from the hallway striping the walls like unanswered questions. "I don't know what I'm doing," I whispered. Dean exhaled through his nose like he'd been holding his breath all week. Neither do I. And yet we were both here. His room was warm, lived in. Not the sterile mess of a single guy's quarters, but the kind of space that revealed more about a person than words ever could. Books stacked unevenly on the nightstand. a flannel shirt draped over the chair, a photo of him and his sister, my best friend, his ex-wife's sister, smiling from some summer barbecue years ago. My stomach twisted. "This is wrong," I said. "Isn't it?" "Probably," he replied and took a step closer. "But so is pretending we don't feel it." I sat down on the edge of his bed. He didn't sit beside me. He knelt on the floor in front of me, looking up, searching my face. "I think about you all the time," he said. "In ways I shouldn't. In ways I can't stop." I looked at my hands. My fingers trembled around the stem of the wine glass. "This was supposed to be safe," I said. "I know. Temporary. I know that too. And now I think we're in trouble." We both laughed quiet, nervous laughter. It didn't feel like joy. It felt like surrender. Then he reached up and gently took the glass from my hand, setting it on the nightstand. His fingers brushed mine, and I felt it again, that same current that had sparked in the dark the first night the power went out. Except this time, we weren't in the dark. And this time, I leaned forward. He kissed me again, and this time it wasn't cautious. It wasn't a question. It was an answer. We fell into each other like the beginning of a storm. Soft at first, then insistent. His hands mapped my back like he was trying to memorize it. My mouth pressed to his like an apology, or maybe a plea. I didn't know what we were doing, only that I didn't want it to stop. Somewhere in the back of my mind, a voice warned me, "This isn't love. This is escape. This is chaos. This is what happens when two broken people build shelter in each other." But another voice, quieter, older, lonelier, said, "Maybe that's what love is too." We didn't sleep together that night, but we slept in the same bed, his arm wrapped around my waist, his breath warm against my shoulder. And the storm outside for once was quieter than the one inside. I woke up before him. The morning light painted lines across the wall, quiet and gentle, nothing like the thoughts racing through my head. Dean was still asleep, one arm lazily draped across my waist. His breath was steady, warm against the back of my neck. It should have been comforting. Instead, it terrified me. Because in the silence of the early hours, stripped of wine and whispers and half-lit confessionals, the truth burned brighter. I had crossed a line. Not just a moral line. A line inside myself that I had promised I'd never blur. I eased out from under his arm and sat on the edge of the bed, staring down at my bare feet on his wooden floor. A part of me wanted to cry, not from regret exactly, but from the weight of what this meant. This wasn't a mistake I could shrug off. It wasn't a fling. And it wasn't just about the kiss anymore. I dressed in silence, tiptoeing, like a teenager, sneaking out before her parents woke. The irony wasn't lost on me, two grown adults tangled in a mess that felt both teenage and tragic. As I reached for the door, I heard his voice low, groggy, but clear. "You're leaving." I froze. I need to think I said without turning around. He sat up, sheets falling to his waist. "About last night. About everything." There was a pause. "I don't regret it," he said, voice firm now, not 1 second. That made it worse, because I didn't either. I didn't regret how he made me feel. I didn't regret the way he touched me like I was still someone worth craving. I didn't regret the heat or the honesty or the silence that followed. What I regretted deeply, desperately, was that I didn't know how to go back. Back to being roommates. Back to pretending I was fine. Back to the woman who thought she had control over her own story. I looked at him one last time. He was watching me, eyes soft, a kind of quiet knowing in his expression. Like he understood the war waging inside me. "I need time," I whispered. He nodded, and I left. But time doesn't heal things when you're still bleeding. And I was bleeding on the inside, slow, invisible wounds that wouldn't show up in photos, but would ache in every quiet moment alone. The hours passed, then the days, and Dean didn't knock on my door. He gave me space, but space didn't bring clarity. It only made the absence louder. Until one night, I walked into the living room and found him packing a small bag. My heart thudded. "You're leaving?" I asked. He didn't look up. I think we both need distance. I wanted to argue, beg, say something real. But I just nodded. Because maybe he was right. Maybe we had burned too fast, too close. And now we were both ash. Dean left that night. No drama, no big scene. Just a quiet closing of the door and the dull thud of his boots down the hallway. He left a note, one line scribbled on the back of a takeout receipt. "If space is what you need, I'll give it." But if you ever ask me to come back, I will no questions." I stared at that note like it held the power to stop the ache in my chest. It didn't. The apartment was suddenly too quiet. The creaks in the floorboards seemed louder, the ticking clock more aggressive, and the silence it was suffocating. For the first time since moving in, I felt alone in the way that mattered not physically, but emotionally. I was no longer just between relationships, I was between who I used to be and who I was becoming. And I wasn't sure I liked either version. The first few days I told myself it was for the best. That what happened with Dean had been a beautiful mistake, a fleeting lapse in control. But that voice in my head, the one that whispered when the world went still, kept asking, if it was a mistake, why did it feel like the most true thing in years? I kept busy, cleaned the kitchen even though it was spotless, reorganized the linen closet, bought candles I didn't need. I did everything except sit with the feelings clawing at my gut. Until one night, I found myself on the couch, wine glass in hand, staring at the cushion where he used to sit. The groove was still there. The memory of his laughter still echoed faintly in that space. I could almost hear him teasing me about my weird obsession with crime shows. Almost smell his aftershave lingering in the throw blanket he always stole from my side. And I missed him, not just the way he kissed me, not just the way he touched me. I missed him. His honesty, his restraint. The way he looked at me like I wasn't broken, even when I swore I was. The next morning, I didn't text. I didn't call. But I did walk into his room now, cold and empty, and sat on the bed. And cried. Not because I regretted what happened, but because I knew I couldn't unknow it. What we had, however brief, however flawed, was real. Too real to ignore. Too real to erase. And maybe, just maybe, too real to stay buried. It took me 3 more days. 3 days of pacing past his closed bedroom door. 3 nights of rolling over in bed and instinctively reaching for a warmth that wasn't there. 3 sunrises of telling myself, today you'll forget him. I didn't. And on that 4th morning, I stopped pretending. I called him. The phone rang twice before he picked up. "Hey," he said. His voice was calm, almost too calm. Like he'd prepared himself for the moment I might reach out, but had buried hope deep enough not to feel disappointed if I didn't. "Can we talk?" I asked. Silence on the line. Then, "Your place or mine?" I smiled despite the storm in my stomach. "Yours." An hour later, I was standing in the hallway of a quiet apartment complex I'd never been to before. His new place was smaller than ours, with beige walls and a single framed photo of a mountain range above the couch. No clutter, no warmth, just neutral. Dean opened the door wearing a gray t-shirt and jeans. His hair was tousled like he'd run his fingers through it one too many times. He didn't smile. He didn't frown either. Just looked at me the way he always had, like he saw the version of me I tried to hide from everyone else. I stepped inside my fingers, brushing against the edge of the couch as I passed. I didn't know what to say, I admitted, sitting down. "You didn't have to say anything," he said. "I knew you'd come when you were ready." I looked up. And what if I never had? He hesitated. "Then I'd know it wasn't real for you." There it was. The confession I'd been avoiding. Because it was real. And that scared me more than the taboo of what we'd done. "I missed you," I whispered. Dean sat beside me. Not too close. Just enough to make my pulse stutter. "I missed us," he said. There it was again, us. A word that hadn't existed between us until the lights went out that night. We sat in silence. Not uncomfortable, not expectant, just present. Then I said the one thing I had promised myself I wouldn't. "Did we ruin everything?" Dean didn't flinch. Or maybe we uncovered something neither of us wanted to admit. I looked at him, really looked. And in that moment, I realized he wasn't waiting for me to be perfect. He was waiting for me to be honest. And maybe, just maybe, so was I. I reached for his hand. He didn't pull away. We didn't kiss that day. We didn't tear into each other like lovers reunited after war. Instead, we sat on that couch, fingers laced together, saying nothing. Because silence sometimes tells the story best. But the moment I stepped back into our apartment later that night, reality returned with sharp clarity. There were dishes in the sink from before he left. A framed photo of us just roommates back then smiling over takeout containers. And on the fridge, a magnet note I'd written weeks ago. "Don't forget rent's due Friday. I'll cover groceries." That note, that handwriting, That version of me, she had no idea what was coming. I stood there staring at it, my fingers tracing the ink like it belonged to someone else. Someone simpler. Someone safer. But I wasn't her anymore. And maybe that's what scared me most. Later that week, I saw my sister. She brought over wine and bad dating stories and sat on the balcony laughing as if the world hadn't shifted under my feet. She glanced around, noticing Dean's absence. "Where's your favorite roommate?" she asked with a wink. My stomach tightened. Taking a break. He needed space. Her expression softened. "You two were always close. I used to joke you got along better with him than I did with my husband." I forced a laugh. "We're just friends." "Sure," she said. But the way she said it, she didn't know, but something in her sensed. That's the thing about secrets. They're never as invisible as we hope. Later that night, I lay in bed, scrolling through photos of us birthday parties, movie nights, cooking disasters. It was all so innocent. So easy, until it wasn't. A text lit up my screen. "Dean, you up?" I didn't hesitate. Me always. "Dean, I can't stop thinking about you." Neither could I. Me then come back. He didn't respond right away. My heart pounded. Then, "Dean, I'm outside." I rushed to the door. When I opened it, he was there. Same gray t-shirt, same storm in his eyes. And without a word, he stepped in. This time, no one was drunk. No lights flickered. No excuses hovered between us. Only truth and heat and the sound of breath catching before everything changed. Again, I woke before he did. For a moment, I just lay there listening to his steady breathing beside me, my fingers tracing the rise and fall of the sheet that barely covered his chest. The light from the window was soft, almost forgiving, like it hadn't seen what we'd done. Or maybe it had. Maybe it just didn't care. Dean shifted slightly, eyes still closed, his arm sliding across the bed to find me. It wasn't lust anymore, not just that. It was something heavier, softer, was something with weight and consequence. I slipped out of bed and wrapped myself in the oversized cardigan draped over the chair, his of course. Everything in this place still had traces of him, of us. I wandered into the kitchen, made coffee, and leaned against the counter, staring at the floor tiles like they held answers. What now? There were no rules for this. No instruction manual for when roommates became lovers, or when boundaries collapsed under the weight of loneliness and unspoken need. He walked in minutes later, shirtless hair, a mess, eyes sleepy, but clear. "You left," he murmured. "Just needed coffee." He nodded, stepped forward, took the mug from my hand, and took a sip without asking. Like we'd been doing this forever. Like this wasn't a secret, a scandal. Like it wasn't wrong. "Do you regret it?" I asked quietly. He looked at me for a long time. Then only the part where we tried to pretend we didn't feel this before. The truth burned. Because I had felt it. Long before that night, every time he sat too close, every time his hand brushed mine and lingered just a second too long, every time he looked at me like I wasn't someone's mess, but something worth waiting for. But it was still a secret, still something we couldn't explain. "What do we tell people?" I asked, voice barely above a whisper. He stepped closer, lifted my chin so our eyes met. "We tell them whatever we want," he said. "Or we tell them nothing. But we don't lie to ourselves anymore." I wanted to believe that was enough, that we could carve a space in the world for something this complicated, this real. But even as he kissed me slow and steady like a vow, I knew the hardest part hadn't even started yet. Love might be blind. But shame sees everything. We tried to keep things normal, whatever that meant. Dean still showered with the door half open, still left dirty mugs in the sink. Still called me roomie in texts, like we hadn't crossed the most unspoken boundary that existed between two people who were never supposed to be anything more. But normal isn't just about what you do. It's about what you hide. And I was hiding so much, I barely recognized my reflection anymore. The first test came at brunch with friends. A few of them came over that Saturday, mimosas, fresh fruit, the usual banter about dating apps and bad bosses. Dean stayed in his room at first. But eventually, he emerged with the bedhead and casual charm, like nothing had changed. But something had. I watched him pour orange juice and laugh at a dumb story. Watched him glance at me just a second too long. I felt it. And I knew Natalie saw it. She was the observant one. Always had been. Her gaze flicked between us as I offered fruit to Dean without looking, and he said thanks, like it was code for something else. After they left, she texted me, "Natalie, are you and Dean?" Okay. I stared at the message, heart hammering. Me? Yeah. Why? Natalie, I deek. Something felt different. You're sure? I didn't reply. What could I say? We'd become a cliché. A secret romance behind shared walls and locked bedroom doors. That night, I confronted Dean. I think people are starting to notice. He didn't look surprised. Let them, he said. But what if it ruins everything? He stepped closer, touched my face. What if hiding it ruins you? I blinked, swallowing the lump in my throat. You're not afraid. Terrified, he admitted. But not of this, not of us. Just of losing you. And there it was, the most terrifying truth of all. This thing between us, it wasn't casual anymore. It wasn't a fling or a mistake born of darkness and desire. It was a flame in a room full of gasoline. Beautiful, dangerous, impossible to ignore. And every day we pretended it wasn't real. It burned a little brighter. The next time Natalie came over, I was prepared. Or at least I thought I was. She showed up with a bottle of wine, and that look the one women give their closest friends, when they've already made up their mind to confront them gently. But firmly. We sat on the balcony, the city humming below us, a warm breeze brushing past like it too was holding its breath. So she started swirling her wine, not looking at me yet. You and Dean. I said nothing. She raised her brows. There's something, isn't there? I looked away. Why do you ask? Because I'm not blind. Because I've seen the way he looks at you and the way you look back. It's not just roommates anymore, is it? The silence between us wasn't empty. It was full. Of truths unsaid. Of fears I hadn't faced aloud. Finally, I spoke. It just happened. Natalie nodded slowly, like she'd already expected that answer. Do you love him? The question hit harder than I expected. Did I remembered the way he brought me soup when I was sick. The way he stood in the rain once waiting to walk me home from a date that went horribly wrong. The way he knew when I needed silence and when I needed to be pulled back into the world. I looked back at her. Maybe, I think I do. She leaned forward, voice softer now. Then why are you acting like it's something to hide? Because it feels wrong, I whispered. Because we started as roommates. Because people will talk. Because what if it ends and I lose both my home and him? Natalie reached out, squeezed my hand. Love doesn't always arrive in the ways we expect. Sometimes it shows up dressed in the most inconvenient circumstances imaginable. Doesn't mean it's not real. I exhaled long and shaky. That night, Dean came home late. I was still on the balcony lights, low wine half gone. He kissed my forehead before saying anything. Then he sat beside me, taking my hand. I saw Natalie leaving, he said. She knows, doesn't she? I nodded. He didn't panic. He didn't pull away. Instead, he asked, do you want to stop? It was the most honest question he'd ever asked me. And I gave him the only answer I had. No, I don't. He smiled, then small, tired, but so full of warmth, it melted the fear clinging to my ribs. For the first time in weeks, I stopped wondering what people would say, and started wondering what we might become. I didn't recognize the woman in the mirror anymore. Not because she looked different, but because she felt different. Stronger, bolder, maybe a little wrecked from the inside out, but awake. Dean had left early that morning for work, pressing a kiss to my collarbone, before slipping out the door like we'd done this 1,000 times. We hadn't, but it was starting to feel like we could. I lingered in the bathroom longer than usual, toothbrush still in hand, staring into the reflection of a woman I was just beginning to understand. A woman who'd fallen for her roommate, crossed lines, risked comfort for something messier, but truer. It scared me how much I didn't want to go back to how things were. But that kind of shift doesn't go unnoticed forever. By evening, my phone buzzed. A message from my sister Hannah. Hannah, hey, can we talk? I saw a story Natalie posted with you and Dean. It looked cozy. My stomach flipped. Of course, Natalie would post something casual, us, laughing, maybe a little too close, maybe a little too together. Of course, Hannah, ever the protector, would notice. I replied with a simple, me sure, come by. An hour later, she was in my kitchen arms, crossed face unreadable. Is it true, she asked. What? You and Dean, are you together? I hesitated. This wasn't just a friend. This was family. Blood. The one who watched me cry after every breakup, who helped me move out after my last toxic relationship. Her judgment would cut deeper than anyone's. I nodded slowly. Yes, her silence was worse than shouting. Then, finally, you know what people are gonna say, right? I nodded again. I do. And you're okay with that. I wasn't sure, but I said I think I am. Because for once, I'm not doing this for anyone else. Just me. She sighed, looked down, then met my eyes. I just don't want you to get hurt. I've already been hurt, I said. But this, Dean, it doesn't feel like a mistake. It feels like a risk I'm willing to take. Her shoulders relaxed just a little. And then she did something I didn't expect. She hugged me. Tight, like she still didn't get it, but she loved me anyway. When she left, I sat on the couch for a long time, the apartment unusually quiet. Then I grabbed my phone, snapped a photo of our shared coffee mugs still sitting on the table, and posted it with one word. Unlabeled. Let them wonder, let them talk. Because the truth was, I was done hiding. 2 weeks passed. 2 weeks of quiet intimacy. Of morning coffees, of late-night laughter, under blankets of brushing teeth side by side, as if we'd been doing it forever. But real life has a way of knocking at the door just when you think you figured out how to lock it. That knock came in the form of Dean's ex-girlfriend, Madison. She wasn't just any ex. She was the ex. The one who had lived in this same apartment before I did. The one who'd nearly convinced him to leave the city. The one who still had keys, apparently. I was reading on the couch when the front door opened without warning. She stepped in like she owned the place. I stood. Can I help you? She blinked at me, confused at first. Then realization spread across her face like slow poison. You must be the roommate. Her tone dripped with judgment. I am, and you are. Madison. She didn't offer a handshake. Just a stare that cut right through me. Is Dean home? No. Of course he wasn't. He was working late. But in that moment, I almost wished he wasn't. She moved further into the apartment without invitation. Her eyes scanned everything like a forensic sweep of what was hers, or might have been. I left a few things in the closet. Hope you don't mind. I did, but I nodded. As she walked to the back, I paced, heart racing. This wasn't just about a sweatshirt or old books. This was a warning shot. A test. Dean came home less than an hour later, just as she was walking out with a box of memories, and one final glance at me that said I was here first. He froze in the doorway when he saw her. Madison smirked. Nice seeing you again. And she was gone. The silence between us was immediate and deafening. I looked at him. Why does she still have keys? He rubbed the back of his neck, ashamed. I forgot. She never gave them back. I folded my arms. Did you forget to tell her about me too? No, she knew. She just didn't know it had become more. He stepped toward me, but I stepped back. I need to know, I whispered, if this thing between us is real. Or just a rebound from her. Dean's eyes softened. I didn't fall in love with you because of her. I fell in love with you in spite of her. The words hit me harder than I expected. Still doubt lingered like smoke. I need time, I said. He nodded. Then I'll wait. And for the first time in weeks, I slept in my room alone. Not because I stopped caring, but because I started needing to know if this was real love or just proximity wearing passion's disguise. Days passed. Not cold, not distant, just careful. Dean gave me space. No late-night knocks, no accidental touches in the hallway, no silent pleas with his eyes. It was maddening, and maybe that's how I knew. Because even in the quiet, I missed him like a sound I couldn't unhear. One rainy Thursday evening, I came home from work to find him in the kitchen, shirt sleeves rolled up cooking pasta like nothing had fractured between us. Smells good, I said softly. He looked up. It's your favorite. I hesitated. You remembered. I remember everything about you, he replied. And it didn't sound like a line, it sounded like truth. We ate in silence, forks scraping against plates, a storm rolling outside the windows like some divine soundtrack. Afterward, he reached for the dishes, but I stopped him. I need to say something first, I said. He froze. I've thought about what this is what it means. And the truth is, I don't care what people say. I don't care what label we give it, or who used to live in this apartment, or who still has keys. He swallowed hard. I just know I continued that when I picture coming home. I picture you. He didn't say anything at first. just stepped toward me slowly. When he spoke, his voice cracked slightly. "Then let's stop running from what we already are." I nodded. And this time when we kissed, it wasn't forbidden or reckless or hidden. It was ours. We still lived in the same apartment. We still kept our toothbrushes side by side. But something fundamental had shifted. We weren't just roommates anymore. We weren't just a mistake waiting to be judged. We were a choice. Every morning, every night. The world outside might never understand it. But in our little corner of the universe between secondhand furniture and late-night laughter, we'd found something real. Messy, complicated, unexpected, but real. And sometimes that's all love really is.